morning. This is Left and Right, and I'm Tom McLaughlin from Lovell, Maine. I'm on the right, and this is Mark Guerringue of Conway, New Hampshire, newspaper publisher, and he is representing the left, even though he doesn't completely consider himself on the left. Left, center, whatever.
These days it's hard to tell, right?
This is September 4th. It's Tuesday. It's an odd day for us, but we couldn't make it the same day, the same time until today. And the next show, well, I'll wait till after the show to explain all that. So a lot going on, as always. Mark has been on vacation, he said to us in a little chit-chat before the cameras went on, and so he said he hasn't been paying attention to current events too much. But
No, not with the U.S. Open on.
The new U.S. Open, okay, so and that would be golf?
Tennis.
Oh, tennis, okay, that's right, you're into tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. But first question from our producer that he asked us to start with, he says, asks, what do you think John McCain was saying by asking George W. Bush and Barack Obama to give eulogies at his funeral? Did you catch any of that?
I did.
Funeral?
It was quite moving. I actually saw the little bit I watched. I happened to tune in with both the eulogies by George Bush and Barack Obama, and they were really quite good, and I think they represented their presidencies. I mean, George is, just more plain-spoken and so forth, and Obama's, a little more articulate that way and kind of funny when he made that one-liner that everybody talks about, is that he said, he was playing a joke, that McCain was playing a joke by having both George and I say something nice about him.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been.
I did hear that one.
Yeah. So he, it's been talked to death for sure, but clearly, I don't think there's ever been anything in our history where, the current sitting president was basically playing golf, sitting on his thumbs. What a message that John McCain, his final lasting message was one of unity, and I think it came through, and it was nice to see.
I think you're right that McCain orchestrated this very closely.
Mm-hmm.
His extensive funeral. From Arizona to Annapolis to
Rotunda,
the White House, not the White House, but the Capitol. Rotunda, yep. And over a week, it seemed like almost 2 weeks, that every time I tuned into the news, the lead story was John McCain's funeral. I think it was overdone, honestly. McCain, was certainly, as everyone points to first, his service to the country and so forth, and as a naval pilot, and especially as a POW who withstood torture for so long, so as not to make it. He could have been released if he gave information to his captors, his tormentors, and refused to do that. And clearly, the way he moved, after that, his shoulders were taken out of joint, and so I was always struck by that. Watching him politically, I don't think he did a great job. He was bipartisan, but
Is that your definition of not doing a good job, being bipartisan?
No, I think that he was played because he was a Republican who often went against the Republican, whoever it was, George W. Bush or especially Donald Trump. He was given a lot of airtime, and he was so he was darling of the mainstream media for a long time, right up until he opposed Barack Obama, and both of them had their nominations. Then the media went after him tooth and nail. And I remember John Edwards was, when he was running, he had an affair with a woman, and he'd had a child by her, and the mainstream media didn't cover it at all.
How can you say that?
Not until it came out, and they could not ignore it any longer. But then when John McCain, the New York Times led on its front page that John McCain was having an affair during the campaign with Barack Obama, and there was no evidence to support it. it eventually died. But I mean, there was the flimsiest of second or third hand information, which they gave by way of innuendo. I mean, they didn't come right out and say John McCain had an affair, but they would say, well, there are reports that, you know, that this is going on. And I remember contrasting that. And he must have...
Did he have an affair? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think he did.
So what do you...
if he did, there wasn't any real
So what are you saying?
Well, I'm saying is that when he became an opponent of Barack Obama, and Barack Obama was one mainstream media wanted to win, then the media that had treated him with kid gloves prior to that all of a sudden turned on him. And I don't think...
They didn't turn on... I don't know. You just always see everything through the media. And it's just amazing that that's your point of view. It's like, you know, like it's still insulting to John McCain when you're saying, well, he was played. You used that word just a minute ago. He was played. Yeah. You know, and it's just, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a little tiresome about that it's always the media's fault. I mean, John Edwards was outed for that. I mean, it was George Bush in 2000 who really sunk McCain's nomination in South Carolina when he spread all those rumors about him having a baby with had a black baby.
I never even heard that.
Oh yeah, look it up on your conspiracy theory, on conspiracy sites. But it's true, and so there was just a nasty...
George Bush released that story on John McCain.
This is why he lost in South Carolina. After McCain won New Hampshire, which is a surprise. And we were, by the way, little aside, plug for the Conway Daily Sun, we were the only paper in New Hampshire to endorse John McCain in 2000. And he won, and then he went to South Carolina, and he just got demolished, and because George Bush wasn't playing fair. I mean, they never play fair, but it was the story about him having a black baby that really put him under. And
see, I never even heard that. If I did, I didn't. It didn't register with me.
So, I mean, I just think this idea about you always, and I don't mean to. I guess that it really is a conservative thing, and it's always about the media. I mean, the media created Trump. The media sunk Bill Clinton. The media sunk John Edwards. I mean, they didn't give John Edwards. He was the darling of the Democrats. You know. He was. Why didn't why didn't the media go after until Stormy Daniels? Why didn't they go after all the affairs that Donald Trump has had until it really came out with Stormy Daniels when she came out herself? Like, why didn't they go after him for the last year or two? Everybody knew he's had affairs and stuff. So I think it's just.
Well, you don't think they? Oh, all right.
I think it's just, and I'm not saying the media is perfect, but I just don't see how you can just always put everything through the media, that the media wanted Obama to win. Oh, then I guess if that's the case, then they must have wanted Donald Trump to win.
How do we know presidential candidates? I mean, whenever there's a race, how do we know them except through media? That's how we know them.
I know that, but I guess I'm saying if you're saying, you just said the media wanted Obama to win. Therefore,
I believe that to be
true. The media wanted Trump to win. Because of all the media. Donald Trump himself says he won partly because of all the billions of dollars of free media he got. So at least all I'm asking is that you be consistent in your logic.
I will agree with you when you say that the media caused Trump to win.
I say they wanted.
But I would say. You say they wanted Trump to win.
I'm being ridiculous about it, but because in the way that you say the media wants Obama to win, yes, you're talking to the New York Times publishers and the media executives. Well, if you can say that, I can say just as easily that the media wanted, because the evidence is there. They made, of all the candidates ever, they made Donald Trump in 2015. And so I am interpreting that as that they must have therefore wanted him to win, just like you're saying they wanted Obama to win.
I'm not sure media consciously I believe media did not realize that their extensive coverage of Donald Trump during the primaries, especially during the primaries, would cause him to win the nomination. If they did, it was because they thought he would be the weakest candidate against Hillary Clinton and she'd wipe the floor with him.
You always say that and that's we can go around this forever and ever and ever and waste the viewers' times, but you always say the media has an agenda. And so why don't you just,
The last time you asked me that, you said, do you have any evidence of media actually conspiring? And it was here on the show about a couple of months ago. And I said, yes, I do. And I mentioned this organization called Journalist.
Yeah.
And I sent you the information
Yeah.
about it. And what was that organization? It was an organization of hundreds of prominent media people who were conspiring to not report on the Reverend Jeremiah Wright during the Barack Obama campaign in 2008. And it was extensively documented that that is what they were doing, because they knew that if Jeremiah Wright's actual background, who that guy was and what he believed, and the extensive association that Obama had with him were publicized, that it would really hurt Obama's chances of getting elected. And John McCain even made a decision. He said that during the campaign he is not going to even mention Jeremiah Wright, because he said, oh, that would be exploiting something racist or something, which I think sunk his campaign.
Yeah, but Jeremiah Wright was just he was a pastor in Chicago. Is that who he was?
He was.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So, but it's okay, because that's your big thing about the conspiracy about some pastor that Obama went to church with 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when he was pastor at a church in Chicago. Big deal. I mean, I don't see the media reporting on all the Trump connections to Russia and all his business dealings and his bank loans. Why isn't that the front page all the time?
It is front page all the time.
I don't see it.
And there isn't any evidence. They haven't come up with any evidence of bank loans and stuff on Russians and Trump's association with Russia. They just simply haven't. After 2 years, over 2 years of
So
investigating.
you're still defending Trump. He's got all
I'm
this
defending that. I am saying that this was a completely trumped up charge against Donald Trump.
But he had real dealings. When the banks in New York wouldn't loan him money 20 years ago, it was the Russian oligarchs who did. It's just a known thing. He was going to build the big Trump Tower in Russia. I mean, in Moscow. I mean, there's all those stories. He has. Now you can call them legitimate. I can call them legitimate connections, but he definitely had legitimate banking connections to those guys.
Okay, so if he had banking connections, but what has dominated the news now, since even before, especially
there's all the corrupt people who have been indicted or convicted.
The special prosecutor Robert Mueller, who was commissioned to look for evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign to get him elected.
How many indictments were there with the Clinton administration when he got impeached? None. How many indictments we had now?
What do you mean indictments?
Well, indictments like how many
Clintons?
people? Yeah, when Bill Clinton was impeached.
There were quite a few, and several people went to jail.
I missed that. Who were they?
McDougal's. I don't know if.
But she didn't go to jail, did she?
Who? Hillary?
No, McDougal.
Susan McDougal went to jail. Yeah, for years, and they offered her pretty much what Mueller is trying to do now with Manafort and with the rest of them that he has indicted, to turn on Trump. And they did try to do that with Susan McDougal, and they let her out of jail, and she wouldn't speak.
Right.
So she finished out her sentence, and but they were involved. That was a whitewater thing, all right? Then that was what the special prosecutor was originally charged to look into, was whitewater.
Right, and that
a real estate deal in Arkansas that happened, I think, while he was governor or maybe attorney general.
Yeah.
I mean, before he was president. So why should they even do that? The special prosecutor, I think the damage that special prosecutors do, I think, was shown in the Trump campaign. I mean, in the Clinton campaign first, because they went off on the sexual harassment stuff and Monica Lewinsky and all of that, which wasn't their charge, and they damaged Clinton. They handicapped his administration, and he emerged, having been impeached but not convicted in the Senate. And now they're looking to repeat that with Donald Trump. He was charged with originally finding collusion between Russia and his campaign.
Yeah, but they haven't.
In 2016, there's no evidence of that, so now they're going after all this other stuff. And so.
Well, but going after other stuff is like, and I forgot about Susan McDougal, so I stand corrected on that.
There were several others as well.
But going after all this other stuff, and Manafort's these are real criminals. Manafort, Gates, Flynn, it's the whole list. You got the Cohen. It's just, and then you got the obstruction of justice that's coming out. How can it not be obstruction of justice? He fired Comey. He's threatened to fire Sessions. He's probably going to do it before or after the elections. He just said it over the weekend.
Yeah,
and
probably will.
And then he's got the the two payoffs to the Playboy model and the porn star Stormy a month before the election, how much clearer can it be about obstruction of justice? I mean, that probably paved the way for him. If they had come out before the election, he probably would have lost.
His payoff to Stormy Daniels
and
some other woman.
Yeah. In some relationship with...
I don't think anybody disputes that he had an affair with these two women and maybe some others as well, right? And he was married at the time.
Right.
So it comes up that
You're saying he didn't pay it off? You're saying he didn't pay him off?
Oh, I expect he did. Yeah,
Okay.
I think the evidence is pretty clear
So that's
that he did.
You agree that's obstruction of justice?
I don't agree it's obstruction of justice. No, I don't. I mean,
it's the campaign violation.
No, I don't.
He used that money to protect his campaign a month before the general election.
Okay, you assume that he used it to protect his campaign, and maybe that was an ancillary effect of it. How about if he didn't want his wife to find out that he had screwed around on
No,
her?
I think it's both. It
Okay.
doesn't matter. I mean, so what? And?
We don't really know what his motivation was, correct?
It doesn't matter what his motivation is. Ignorance is not an excuse for the law.
Is it illegal?
I don't know if it's illegal or not, but I think
According to Alan Dershowitz, it's not.
Well, Elaine Dershowitz is a hack for Trump now.
Okay,
I mean, really.
He's a
Come
hack
on.
for Trump. All right. Not a constitutional lawyer that
Oh, he is.
happens to know something about.
But he is. But he's the one guy. He's the one. He's on all the TV shows all the
He
time.
is, yeah.
Defending Trump. He's got his book out defending Trump, the case against impeachment or whatever it
Yeah,
is. So,
yeah. So therefore, he has no credibility in your eyes?
I think he's very biased. He's obviously very biased. He's in the
Okay.
Trump camp. He's a
Okay.
smart guy and all that, but he's in the Trump camp. He's not. He's the one lawyer.
He's getting a lot of attention. He's a frequent guest on Fox News.
Well, he's a frequent guest on CNN too, because they always have the foil. Yeah, I agree with that. But I'm just saying it's just obvious that he paid off those women a month before the election.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm sure he didn't want his. Why didn't he pay him off a year before? If he was trying to protect his. I'm
Okay.
sure he's trying to protect his family. When has he ever
Maybe-
been concerned about his family, frankly? With his affairs and all that. So let's put that as the morality. If you want to argue
Even
the
if it
morality
was-
of Donald
even
Trump.
if it was, if you say even if it could be established
Mm-hmm.
that his motivation was that he was trying to protect his campaign,
Mm-hmm.
he used his own money to contribute to the campaign. There was nothing illegal about that.
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, one time he says before he said he instructed that Cohen did it on behalf of him and he took a mortgage out. So now Trump is, right? Cohen
And
said
then he
that.
said he reimbursed him, and Cohen,
Yeah.
I think, has verified that.
Well, we'll see. So what you're really saying is you're excusing his behavior and
No,
excusing
I'm
the
not
fact that how it
excusing
might
it.
have changed the election on a technicality. So we're going to discuss this technicality, whether his money, whether Cohen borrowed the money and got a equity loan on his house. But you're okay with the morality of the whole thing. You're okay with the way
I'm not okay with the
Oh,
man.
okay. But you're defending it.
Having.
You're defending
Am I
it. This is the-
defending
this
him?
is- this is
No,
the
I'm
Clint-
refuting what you said, which is that it's obstruction of justice,
Well,
or
I
that
made a
it's a
mistake.
campaign violation.
It appears to be a campaign violation. If it's not technically, which we don't know yet, and I don't think you know any better than I, it's
Well-
certainly a campaign violation in the spirit of the campaign violation. And to me, I'm hearing Bill Clinton saying the definition of is. You're trying to parse out a technical thing of whether it's a campaign violation, financial campaign violation.
The man messed around extensively. All right, he was married for the third time, and he's doing this. So I think that's wrong. The morality of that is wrong. It's in past years, I think that would have been enough to sink a campaign. But I don't think it was news when it came to Donald Trump, because he was such a public person before he became a presidential candidate, and he didn't try to hide any of his sexual escapades,
Well,
except
why
until
did
he
he-
starts running for
Right.
president. So you have a case that could be
Yeah,
it, but
okay.
still, it's not a campaign violation according to the legal experts that
According
I
to
have listened
Dershowitz.
to, and a few others whose names I
Yeah,
can't
but there are other
tell
people
you
who,
right now.
I'm just going on the record here to say there are other people who say it is. You accept that.
That other people say it is.
It is a campaign violation. We got many stories about who paid those women off.
Do I know for sure? I don't know for
Right,
sure,
okay.
but I don't suspect that it is. Because what I see this whole, I agree with Trump when he says that this is a witch hunt. And I think it's extensively documented that it is a witch hunt. That Obama's DOJ and FBI planted people and paid them several $100,000 to meet with Papadopoulos and to try and meet with Cohen.
What about Manafort?
And to try and meet with others to plant information that there was. Here's some information about.
So you
some
think the
Russians
whole-
have information that will help your
You think
campaign.
the whole justice of all the people that have gone...
I think it was a complete setup. Yes, I do.
Manafort was a complete...
No, Manafort did whatever he did before he became the Trump campaign manager, and that is what he's been indicted for. That's what he was found guilty of. Stuff that happened years before Trump ever even announced for president.
All right, okay, then
so
you're
that's
fine.
not
If you're
hasn't
gonna
got
think-
anything related to
You've got
Donald
you've
Trump
got
and the
indictments. You've got
Russians.
like 12 and Russians indicted. You've got Manafort. You've got Gates. You've got Flynn. I mean, it just is this laundry list of people who are copying pleas, working with the Justice Department. You got Cohen, and you're defending all that stuff. You're defending. Trump came in and said, "I'm having the best people. I'm going to surround." Trump came in and said, "I'm going to surround myself with the best people," and he's had the most corrupt government probably in the history of our country.
Oh, I don't think so. No.
How many people have been? Okay, we're not gonna. You think it's all a conspiracy, and that's fine.
And that's
fine. I don't know where we go with this. It's just. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about how you're going to come with this convoluted, narrow conspiracy about how all these people are indicted.
That are things unrelated to Donald Trump.
They're related to that's the thing. They're all related to Donald Trump.
How are they? Because these
Because they
people
work for
him.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I remember a book by.
And it's only been the Ken Starr. How many years did he go after Whitewater? 3 or 4 years, and we're only in the 18 months in this Mueller investigation. So
I think both were horrendous miscarriages of justice. They were. The special prosecutor law. They should throw it out, or they should have strict limits. This is what you're going after. The Whitewater deal, the collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, and nothing else. There's Harvey Silverglade, ever hear of him?
No.
ACLU lawyer, good friend of Alan Dershowitz and Lawrence Tribe. Now there's 3 guys who are, a pretty eclectic group. Okay, Tribe is very liberal Democrat. Dershowitz used to be very little liberal Democrat. And Silverglade certainly is. He's very close, I think, former president of the ACLU. He came out with a book. He said, I think it's 100 felonies a day. That is, if you wanted to find something on anybody, you can find something. The way our laws are written, especially tax laws, that I remember Defense Secretary, what's his name, Rumsfeld. He files his income tax. He says, I hired the best, most expensive accounting firm I could think of and gave them all of my records and asked them to do as honest a job as possible, but I don't know if they did because the tax code is such that I might have done something illegal by signing my name on my tax return.
I think it's very difficult.
And so I think you can find anything if you want to and you investigate long enough on just about anybody. Now, Manafort, stealing money, and that guy Gates, his testimony was very damaging, both to himself and to Manafort. So yeah, they were consciously doing illegal stuff. But even if people were, and I think, on Cohen, I don't understand the medallion thing. I didn't really look into it, but I guess there doesn't seem to be any disagreement that he did something illegal there. Now, okay, so am I surprised? No, I'm not really surprised. How many people are in that kind of business at that level that don't do illegal stuff?
What do you think about him threatening to fire Sessions, the Attorney General?
I
mean, that's
think
against this. We're supposed to be a country of laws.
Yeah.
And to fire your Attorney General, who's supposed to be the lead justice in this country, when he was, and let's get to another point about point about Trump, is that his loyalty. I mean, Sessions was basically the first guy advocate for Trump back in the election.
He was, yeah.
And all that. So he brings him in, and because he won't stop the Russian investigation, now he's going to fire him. He said he shouldn't have recused himself. I mean, these are just violations of
I agree. He shouldn't have
law.
recused himself.
He should have.
Should not have recused himself.
Okay.
Because he met with the Russian ambassador at a Republican National Convention, and then didn't remember meeting him. I mean, just saying hi, I'm Jeff Sessions and so forth. And it was brought out by what's his name that used to play the Stuart Smalley character on Saturday Night Live, and he was a senator from Minnesota or Michigan. And he, under his testimony, he's had to resign recently. Right. So he, because of that testimony, and he rattled Sessions so much. Sessions says, "Well, I'll recuse myself then. If you affirm my position as Attorney General, I'll recuse myself from this investigation." I think that was a stupid move.
You think you should fire him?
I really like Jeff Sessions, and I think he's an honorable man, and I think he's in over his head. I don't think he's got the spine to go after the people who are going after Donald Trump. A few months ago, we discussed South Africa and how white farmers' land was being taken away by government, and some of them were being killed. So I happened to see it that morning, before the show, and I brought it up, and I think you had heard something about it as well. You knew someone from that area,
yeah.
and you verified that there's something going on down there.
Yeah.
After that, I've been watching the story, and it's getting worse. And President Trump mentioned it, and he asked his Secretary of State to look into it and perhaps have some sanctions against the South African government, which is run by the African National Congress. It's a political party now in South Africa, which was, what's his name, the famous
Mandela?
Mandela's party. All right, now Malema, Julius Malema, belongs to the Economic Justice Party, EJ, something like that. And it's a minority party, less than 20% in government. I think they have a parliamentary democracy. Anyway, he said, "We have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future. The masses are on board for an unled revolution and anarchy." Scary guy, and he wears a military kind of uniform, and I don't think he's a official military guy, but he's like a brown shirt type, and I think he wears a beret, and others call him the Hitler of South Africa.
So are you saying this to compare to Trump? Because I know Trump said
I'm not.
Well,
No.
you said, because Trump said there could be violence after this election if the Democrats win. Is that
No,
what
no, it wasn't in that context at all.
Oh, I saw. I'm sorry,
No, Trump
it
had
sounds
a
like
tweet.
Trump is what
About
you're
2
saying.
weeks ago, Trump tweeted,
Right.
of his many tweets, it didn't get a lot of attention, but it pertained to the situation in South Africa.
Oh, I thought you were talking about I thought you were making a parallel to the threats and violence in South Africa to the Trump threats of violence if the Democrats win. Because that tweet, remember that? It was controversial last week or 2 weeks ago? That Trump tweeted about how there could be violence if the Democrats win.
Where? Where?
In our
Oh,
country.
you mean
in the midterm?
In the midterm?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
So,
I
so I
didn't.
thought you were making a
I
comparison
did not even see
between
that tweet, no.
to the South Africans and Trump. Because
How
Trump
much-
has really reminded me of this autocratic, dangerous language, and I thought that's what you meant.
Nope.
Making the comparison. Okay,
Nope,
go ahead.
It's not.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
Trump asked his Secretary of State to look into the
Right.
situation in South Africa with an eye to perhaps Trump issuing economic sanctions against the country because of these activities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Malema said that, and then more recently, Malema gets more open. He said, "Go after the white man. We are cutting the throat of whiteness." Now, again, his party is in government, but it's a minority party. Now, the President Zuma, which was ANC, this
Right.
is now going back to 2012, I just found this, he was on tape singing a song that had the lyrics, "We are going to shoot them with the machine gun. They're going to run. You are a Boer," which is white South African organization, the Boers, Afrikaners and so forth. "We're going to hit them and you are going to run, shoot the Boer." His followers would yell, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmers." Now, whites are leaving South Africa in droves, and the value of their land, if they choose to sell it, of course, is plummeting because it's expected to be expropriated. So it's not a good situation. Now, the white South African government acknowledges that there are dozens of white farmers who have been killed. Other sources indicate that there are several hundred who have been killed, maybe even over 1,000 who have been killed. Just roving hordes of bandits just go to their ranch and just wipe them out. And it's not a good situation. It hasn't gotten very much media attention because, again, it wasn't that long ago that Mandela died, and I think Obama just went there for somebody's funeral, made a speech in South Africa and didn't address any of this, but this is clearly a dangerous situation. So there's that.
Were you against apartheid 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Who wouldn't be? I mean, it's terrible. I mean, I'm not surprised that this is going on.
Yeah, it's retribution.
Yeah. And I expected it when the white South African government pretty much stepped down and the ANC took over. And then Mandela and Desmond Tutu, who was an Episcopal bishop who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts at saying, okay, look, it's over. Now let's not have any retribution, and let's just get on with being a country where this doesn't exist anymore, apartheid. And it worked for how long? How long has it been? About 15 years or so. But now, evidently, it did not go away, and it's so retribution. Is it retribution? I mean,
well, the whites took all the land from the blacks, so the blacks are taking it back. It's terrible on both sides. It'd be like saying if the Indians in our country tried to take over and try to take their land back, or any indigenous population.
Been there for like 300 years, these whites that have developed these farms.
Well, it was apartheid until 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, less than that, I think, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying it's good. It's not saying it's good. I'm not saying
we understand
I'm not sure
the cause and effect.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
But
you're not sanctioning it.
Of course not.
Good.
And there's no violence that can be sanctioned. It's crazy. I mean, it's and Mandela obviously was a special person to bridge that gap. The bridge, I mean, if it wasn't for Mandela, it probably would have happened violently.
Yeah, I think it would have.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
And Zuma was corrupt, and there you go. So, it's a terrible thing. I knew a friend of mine, I might have said this last time, who lived in Johannesburg, and she said when you went to, and this is downtown, and then when you came out of like a downtown mall, there would be a big, like an internal parking garage, and there'd be a big sign that says, "Be careful who's following you home." I mean, you had to be, and that she lived in a neighborhood
rapes
where they had
epidemic.
they had to have their own private security guard, neighborhood by neighborhood. I mean, it's just the fear of living there, and crime. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter lived in Cape Town for a month once, and I was very scared. But her friend, Jenny Hastings, was there for a year, and my daughter went over to visit with her, and I'm thinking, but she got out okay, and there were no incidents that she ever told me about.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And South Africa's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge country. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of like the old, I mean, obviously that's a terrible situation, and who knows how it's going to end, but I don't think, it's difficult to appreciate from here, the enormity of the country and where it is. It's kind of like the old days where people say, well, I don't want to go to New York City because I could get mugged. Well, New York City's a huge place, right? You just stay out of the wrong neighborhoods.
How about, let's see, recent polls, Gallup poll from about a month ago, indicated that a minority of Democrats, 47%, view capitalism favorably, which is a drop from 56% only 2 years ago. So now it's a minority. Now it was a majority. Socialism, on the other hand, gets mostly good reviews from Democrats, with 57% saying they view it positively, about the same as in 2010. Meanwhile, the overwhelming majority of Republicans, 71%, remain positive about capitalism, while only 16% say they view socialism favorably. Now, so the divide, I mean, the recent elections especially Ocasio-Cortez, I think we have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an anomaly, or is it representative of a trend? I mean, Democrat leaders, some say one, some say the other. Pelosi says, nah, it's just, happened to happen in that one little district, and it's not going to happen anywhere else. Whereas Tom Perez, head of the party, says this is the Democrats, the party of the future. Ocasio-Cortez represents it. Now we have another Democrat socialist who is the Democrat candidate for governor in Florida, recently won that primary. And he's against a very conservative Republican Trump supporter. I forget his Ron DeSantis.
And Gillum.
Gillum is the Democrat. Yeah. So that's a big state. I mean, it's an important state in any presidential election as well. I mean, whoever wins Florida, nobody can become president, not likely, unless they do win Florida. And it's been very close in the last several elections. So is this a trend? Are you concerned that the Democrat Party is this Democrat socialism of Sanders, and now there's a few city council candidates in Portland, for example. They're Democrat socialists. They want to knock off Mavadonis and another longtime city council candidate. So it's happening at several levels now. National, state, and local, at least in states like Maine. So I see it as probably a good thing for conservatives, because it shows that where the Democrat Party is going, and most of the country, I think is alarmed by that trend, and so they're more likely to vote against Democrats, and it would be good for conservatives. On one hand, I feel that way. On the other hand, I am concerned at the continued polarization of the general public in the United States, and that it might. We've already had outbreaks of violence, isolated and sporadic, but a trend toward it, and that concerns me. I am worried about civil unrest that's politically based.
And I think I might have said this last time, but I agree, and I could make the political response and say, well, the radical left now is responding to the radical right. The radical right has really dominated the Republican Party for the last 10 or 15 years, starting with the Tea Party and now with Trump. And the left, really with Bernie Sanders, and now there are those cases that you talk about that are becoming more radicalized, or more extreme. Maybe radical's not the word on either side, but more extreme. So, and I always fall back to is that it's really a have-have-not world. We're getting more in a have-have-not world, and I think the people on both sides, Trump appealed to the have-nots in Middle America, disenfranchised, and the Gilliams are appealing to the urban have-nots. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I think where it comes together, I'm not afraid of a social Democrat any more than I'm afraid of a particular Republican candidate. I do think it just comes together on the policies. So for instance, and I think the big one that's coming up will be health care again. I mean, the Republicans, after 8 years of opposing Obamacare, Trump said he was going to do something on day one to make better, cheaper health care, and the rates are gone out of control even more this last year. So I think that's where it comes together. So it depends on your view of how, like when we have the Republican candidates, because we're doing the we have all the races in New Hampshire and the congressional district, our district for Shea Porter, she's stepped down, and so we had literally like 9 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And in fact, I just wrote an editorial in today's paper about that. And the Republicans to say, well, let's leave it up to the free market for health care, all of them. And the Democrats all say they want some variation of a single-payer system,
Medicare for all.
option.
Most of the
so I think that's where it comes together. So I don't worry. I mean, it's always fun to talk to politics about radical this and radical that, but to me, that's where it comes together. It's on specific policies.
Are you concerned about, the de facto open borders policies of Democrat candidates and the Democrat Party?
I don't really buy that. I think the Democrats and Obama, and why Hillary, of the million reasons why she deserved to lose for her, how she ran her campaign, I think the Democrats really failed to, they were apologetic about the way it was going. I mean, Trump trashed all the economy before he got into office, and now he's touting it. Well, in fact, we've had one of the longest runs in the market in history. I think we just passed it a couple of years ago. And, it started in spring of 2009.
Yeah.
So, and I think the Democrats failed to say how good how the economy was improving 2 years ago. Obama failed to. I mean, Obama was sent more people back to Mexico than anybody else. I mean, there was a flow of more Mexicans going back and Central Americans going back that way.
Central Americans?
Well, I don't know about Central Americans. Probably
Mexicans,
not.
yes. Central Americans,
yes,
no.
Yeah. So I think they failed in that. So I don't think anybody I honestly don't think. I mean, maybe there are some Democrats, and I'm sure you know who they are, who say open borders. I don't think there's anybody or Democrats think there should be open borders. But at the same time, you've got to. I just remember the Ted Cruz in the election when he was interviewing this big German, third generation German dairy farmer in Wisconsin, and they were talking about immigration, and this big guy said, "Look, I got 800 cows, and if I wasn't for the Mexicans, I wouldn't be able to run my farm." And he asked Ted Cruz, "What's the answer to that?" And Ted Cruz says, "We got to close the border." I mean, so I guess I'm saying there's both sides. I don't think I think that mainstream Democrats don't want an open border. And I don't think that they've proved that. I think Obama proved that. I mean, the momentum to get more control over the border has been going on since really 9/11, and I think that continues. And I will say, I give credit to Trump to try to do more, because it was true. They'd come over the border and they never show up for their hearing. And so I think it's a clumsy way he did it, but I do give him credit for saying, okay, something's got to be done.
Build a wall?
I think that's a ridiculous way. I mean, and it really goes back to the arguments of, years ago, we say if the government just enforced it, sort of like the gun debate, like if you don't need more rules, you just have to enforce the rules we have for guns. And it's the same thing with immigration. If they just went after the employers who illegally hire illegals, game over. It would be controlled.
It would be a big step.
Yeah, it would be the biggest step.
Maybe. But a wall, I mean, we deport people. How many times do we deport people and then they come back?
Yeah.
And so it's without a wall, we can't prevent them from coming back. We need more border security, both physical and personnel-wise. Now, it may not be a wall everywhere, because what side are we going to build the wall on the American side of the Rio Grande? It's a huge part of the border, and clearly there you need something other than you need beefed up security and more personnel to stop it, cameras, etc. I mean, it's just but it's hundreds a day, hundreds a day, at least. That's what we know of, and
it's an intractable. I mean, I guess I would just say it's really kind of an intractable problem because those Central Americans are coming up. They're not finding their way through Mexico with babies and kids because, unless they were in difficult circumstances. I mean, they're not.
But they're supported along the way.
Yeah. Well, they have their own sort of version of Underground Railroad. I realize that, but I mean, the reason they want to leave is because it's not so good at home.
Right.
Right. I mean, so I'm saying
not
it's
as
just
good as here.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, how many places are as good as here? Not many. Certainly in this hemisphere.
I agree.
Right. So, I mean, does that?
But there are some terrible places. I mean, Nicaragua and those places. It's violence and the drugs. I mean, they're really kind of out of control.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and it's too bad. I'm just saying it's a human tragedy, and I agree with you that we need border security. And
I listen to Tucker Carlson. He has on pro-immigration people.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every time I've tuned in, which isn't that often, but sometimes I do. And each time I do, he'll have somebody on there. And how many people should be allowed in? And they never answer that question. Should we be open to the whole world? Well, they dodge that question. I mean, the Democrat Party isn't. I said it was the de facto open borders policy. Now, the official policy seems to be now abolish ICE. Now that's called a dog whistle for open borders. That is, everybody should be in. Now, if Barack Obama said that, I believe in socialism, and I want to be. I think he did, but that he would never say that. He was too savvy a politician to realize that to openly advocate socialism.
So-
Instead, he said a fundamental change.
Okay, so
In America.
you really think that Obama wanted the government to take over the means of production in this country?
Now you're talking communism.
No, that's socialism. Socialism is defined by, communism is the political arm. Socialism is really the production is controlled by the government. Look it up.
Well, if you cite Sweden as an example of a successful
socialists.
socialist,
They're not socialist. They have private enterprise.
they do.
Yeah.
Well, I think you and I have different understandings of what socialism is.
Bill, could you Google socialism, please?
I believe the Democrat Party, now if they call it democratic socialism and Bernie
Yeah.
makes that distinction.
Yeah, it's a big
that-
distinction.
Well,
I mean,
I have heard you say socialism works in Scandinavian countries.
I've never said socialism works. I've never said, I'm pretty careful about socialism. And I read an interesting article where they interviewed a bunch of Scandinavians about how everybody thinks they're socialists, and they just scoff at it. They just scoff at it because they're not. It means it's a
Is
private.
Medicare for all socialized medicine?
Yeah, I would say it's socialized medicine. It's a government-run program. Is the military socialized? Is the military socialized government?
Is the VA socialized medicine? Government run.
Is the
Okay.
military government run? Is that socialism?
Well, the Constitution says that no state may have military. There may be no private armies either. So it's constitutionally, outlawed. But socialism, the means of production.
Bill?
Okay. What is the definition of socialism? It's a noun, an economic theory or system in which the means of production, distribution, and exchange are owned by the community collectively, usually through the state. Okay, so is that the direction the Democrat Party wants to go in? You don't say
I don't believe
that
it.
it is. So what would be the difference then between Democrat socialism and, I remember, who was it asked this question on Meet the Press? Couldn't answer it. It was a high Democrat public official. Couldn't answer the question. What's the difference between Democrat socialism and socialism? Can you answer the question?
Well, I really don't. I just know what socialism is, and I know, to me, quite honestly, I've never thought about it. So, I don't have a direct answer. I know what socialism is, and if you call it a social democrat, to me, is someone who believes in more government-funded programs. I look at talk about what the Democrats really want. Look at all the progressives in California and Silicon Valley that are new titans of industry with the high-tech Googles and the and Zuckerberg and all that. You think those guys want socialism? You think they want government control of means of production? They're becoming billionaires in our country, and they're progressive as could be. Bill Gates.
Okay, so is there a difference between Democrat socialism and socialism? You didn't answer.
Well, I don't know what the word. Bill, what's Democrat socialism? No, I don't know. I just know what socialism. I know what socialism is and its status, the means of production. And that's where I draw the line.
Why call it Democrat socialism then?
I don't know. You got me. I don't know that. I've never used that. I don't use that term. I haven't thought about it, but I can be prepared for the next show.
Before Bernie called himself a Democrat socialist, he just called himself a socialist. It was only while he was running for president that he put that qualifier ahead of the socialism. And look at all the support he got. You could, if it weren't for super delegates and if it weren't for Democrat Party shenanigans, he might have well become the nominee instead of Donald Trump. He has advocated socialism for his entire career, starting as mayor of Burlington.
I don't think he's ever advocated the government take over the means of production. I don't believe it. He's got a big fancy house on Lake Champlain.
Then he never read this definition of socialism, perhaps, and if he did, he wouldn't have called himself one?
I don't think so. I don't know. You're asking. I don't know about Bernie Sanders. I know Bernie Sanders advocated for one-payer system for health care and a few other big things. Here we go.
Democratic socialism.
Thank you. Okay. Democratic socialism is a political philosophy that advocates achieving socialist goals within a democratic system as opposed to what it perceives as undemocratic socialist ideology, such as Marxist, Leninist-inspired socialism, which is viewed as being non-democratic in practice. Footnoted. Democrat socialists oppose the Soviet economic model, rejecting the authoritarian form of governance and a highly centralized command economy that took form in the Soviet Union in the early 20th century. And it goes on. You want to hear the rest?
Well, that doesn't tell me much.
No, it doesn't. It pretty much doesn't answer the question between it advocates going in a democratic way to socialism. That's what I got from that.
Well, it says no, but it says it doesn't have a central command economy like the Soviet Union, which goes back to the means of production. That's my simple-minded explanation. Socialism, we don't want socialism. I'm a business guy.
You're against it.
Of course I am.
Yeah, you're not
But I
afraid,
do want-
that the Democrat Party's going in that direction?
No. One, it's not going to be possible, because I don't think the right certainly doesn't want it. I don't think mainstream American, I don't think mainstream Democrats want it, and I certainly, defer to all the progressives on the West Coast who are making $1 billion off our wonderful capitalist system.
I applaud that. I think that's fine. And I would be against, now, Trump has tweeted that he would do something about it, didn't get specific about what. But they're private companies. I mean, you have Facebook as a private company, Google is a private company, Twitter is a private company. I mean, for government to try and control them, because you say, well, you seem to favor progressive candidates, and you seem to have algorithms that screen out, conservative answers or whatever it is, and there seems to be evidence for that. But for government to then step in,
Well,
my model would be for conservatives to come out with a counter program, that tries to provide balance by another private company competing with this private company over here, the ones that are already there.
It's and what scares me, I'm going to throw this in, but I saw a poll that said that 43% of the Republicans approve of Trump regulating and banning certain media, because of the whole fake news thing.
Yeah, I didn't see
so that's
that.
a scary one.
That is scary.
But going, with the Googles and Facebook, and we've talked about this before, but it's a tough. There's always some government regulation. Some government regulation that regulates the newspaper business and broadcast. Right? You can't. I mean, broadcast can't. Broadcast can't
own a newspaper.
Huh?
You didn't use the Press Herald. I mean, the Boston Herald couldn't own.
There was cross ownership issues.
Yeah.
Did you know this? Here's a piece of trivia. I was reading on my vacation, my few days off. I was reading a book about the new moguls, Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, and John Henry, who owns the Boston Globe. But they were telling these old newspaper stories, and it turns out that Joe Kennedy, that JFK won the Pulitzer for Profiles in Courage.
Yeah.
This is a cross ownership. There was some guy at the time, it was like one of the old Boston papers, like the Boston Traveler or something, but the guy there he was on the advisory board for the Pulitzer Prize, but he wanted this big the TV station there in Boston, and he couldn't do it. So Joe Kennedy, and it turns out the Profiles in Courage hadn't even made it to the finalist list for the Pulitzer. And Joe Kennedy did horse trading, influenced the advisory committee, so this guy could get his TV station and his son could get the Pulitzer.
That doesn't surprise me
It's
at all.
amazing.
That old Joe Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's an aside. But the media has to figure it. I mean, there is government regulation for newspapers, broadcast. I mean, broadcast can't. There's a lot of things they can't do on broadcast. There's a lot of things that we can't do. We have to conform to. I mean, a lot of it's been decided by case law with libel. I mean, this whole thing with Alex Jones and being kicked off of social media. To me, it's like, okay, we've already done it in legacy, what they call legacy media, broadcast and print, and now they're just kind of trying to get their heads around how to handle it with social media.
Okay, perhaps. So you expect there might be some kind of government regulation on Facebook and Twitter and such.
I think so, and it may come through the legal system. Is that people, I can print the most innocent things and get sued for libel in the Conway Daily Sun, and the stuff that's on Facebook and social media. It's like, if we ever did that, I'd be out of business. Because not because of government, because we'd be sued. So why they can get away with it? They say they're just a conduit. They're like the power company. But
recently, the Boston Globe, we brought up the Globe, asked for other broadsheet dailies to go on an editorial campaign against the Trump administration. against Trump for calling
Yeah.
the enemy of people and fake news and such as that, and I can't remember the specific wording, but 100 papers signed on to this effort, and the Los Angeles Times said, no, we think that goes against our journalistic standards.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I didn't sign on to that. I thought it was silly
Yeah.
for that reason, and I also thought it was silly is that they're basically preaching to the choir.
Good for you. We got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I
By the
think
way,
that-
the newsprint tariffs have been lifted,
I saw
so
that.
now you can get your raise for your writing your column.
Oh, good. You heard that, folks. He said it here first, and I'm going to hold him to it. Make sure you put that on my YouTube channel. Let's see. I haven't asked for a raise for 20 years.
Good thing. At least you know what the answer will be.
Yeah. Well, wait. He just said, oh, okay. Now you're contradicting yourself.
Well, we
No,
had to,
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I know.
All right. So the other thing is Chuck Todd had an article, came out today, was linked prominently on the Drudge Report and read, I don't know if you ever look at Drudge, but that means, okay, click on this. So I did, and it's an article in the Atlantic. Now, I used to love to read the Atlantic, and I still do occasionally. They have some good stuff, but I used to consider it to be really groundbreaking stuff. Extensive essays, pretty well balanced. Anyway, he's going after what he says is the Trump's assault on media. And now Chuck Todd to me is an example of biased, left-wing biased mainstream media figure. I mean, he's the political editor, head political reporter, whatever it is at NBC News. He's run Meet the Press for
that's
a
him.
long
Okay.
time. Chuck Todd.
Does
You
he
don't
do?
watch
Does he
him?
do that now? Meet
Oh,
the
yeah.
press. He's the Meet the Press guy.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He has for several years.
Okay.
So I watched that every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace, who I think is a pretty even
Yeah,
guy.
I like Chris Wallace.
Yeah, but he'll have a panel, however, Chris Wallace will, with 3 conservatives and 1 liberal.
Right.
But and Meet the Press will have 3 liberals and 1 conservative. I mean, so they're balanced in that way, you might say.
Right.
Meet the Press has way more viewership. Mainstream media, and NBC, CBS, NBC has way more viewership than Fox. I mean, I don't know. Fox breaks even double digits when
Really?
it comes to
I thought-
percent of viewership.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but he goes after Fox News and Roger Ailes tooth and nail, and he says that they basically conducting a campaign against media and have been for 50 years. He says this about Roger Ailes now, for creating Fox News and whatever, and it was I recommend it. It was, I didn't have a firewall. I was able to go right to it. It was a long essay, but he tells more about himself than he does, I think, about the issue. And no, he thinks that mainstream media, and he uses the term mainstream media, is not biased, that they just go after the story. And you've said that many times. You have not convinced me. It's next time we come on, we really need to do an analysis. That is, it's always going to be subjective, but what is the left? What does that mean in terms of today's policies? And I'll suggest to you what I think is the right.
And I know we have 30 seconds left probably, so I'll say this, but my test is, and I know they're liberal and all that, but my test is that when I watch, like when something big happens, when Manafort was sentenced, or not sentenced, but convicted, and it's all over the mainstream media, and then I turn on Fox, like Hannity and those guys, they don't even mention it. And so that to me is it's not that the mainstream media is being biased. It really happened. I mean, the Manafort thing really happened, and
Yeah.
then you go to Tucker Carlson, and he's talking about some immigrant who beat up someone in West Texas. So it's so
Hannity.
selective.
Now, Hannity is an opinion guy.
Well,
but
so
if
is
you go
Tucker.
to Brett Baier, Tucker is too.
Yeah.
Yes. If you go to Brett Baier, for example,
No, I
a
think
straight news guy.
Yeah. So is Chris Wallace.
Yes, so is Chris Wallace. So I think, that's news, but opinion are the other ones, and they can say whatever they want. They can,
Yeah.
but interesting that you should say that. We don't have time because we have less than a minute left, but it's what is covered and what is ignored. You touched on that, and I think that is where the bias is. There's not a lot of fake news on either side. It's what they choose to ignore and what they choose to amplify. That is, to me,
Right. And one of the
way
things that's
that
even,
biases
and we got to go here, but one of the things that's kind of interesting about that's infected the newsrooms is now they look, when they're writing stories, they look and see how much traffic they get online. So that's even, to me, that's apolitical stuff. That's like saying some crazy story gets up there, those are the stories they start writing. We do it at the Sun. I mean, it's not cause and effect, but we look at it all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's interesting.
You got to wrap it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming, Mark.
Thanks,
and,
Tom.
It was a little more contentious this time. We didn't even mainstream media and whatever we talked about
Yeah.
and media bias. So next time we'll pick up with the left and right thing, and it'll be probably less than 2 weeks. It'll be two weeks from Wednesday, less than a month. 2 weeks from Wednesday that we'll be back. No,
Okay.
3 weeks from Wednesday. Anyway, and but thank you for coming. And let's see, what else do I have to say to sign off here?
Say, see you next week.
See you next time, which
Next
would
time.
be in about 3
But
weeks.
they're going to see you next week.
They will see me a week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Thank you,
Okay.
Tom.